Good morning, and welcome to our service today. I'm Scott Finley, and I'll be your service coordinator on this warm, sunny June morning. This weekend marks much celebration. Yesterday, of course, was Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth to everyone. Happy Father's Day today to all those fathers and father figures out there with us. And today is the summer solstice, marking the longest day and shortest night of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere, and celebrated as Letha by some. Reverend Cynthia is here today. She'll share her message about the flower communion titled A Bouquet of Hope. And also with us, working behind the scenes, Jessie as our Zoom host, and Sandy with her beautiful chalice lighting display at the church. The contact info on your screen shows you the best ways to get in touch with folks with answers here in the congregation. Texting or calling Reverend Cynthia at 859-221-3034, or reaching out to our admin, Chris, at gnuuc@gnuuc.org. As Jessie lights our chalice, our opening words today are from Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern. Within the heart of the flower, the fountain of beauty. Within the heart of the community, a fire that warms and dances. Within the heart of each of us, a spark of the spirit of life. Holy, holy, holy. Our covenant is the silk that joins us together in a web of interconnection. The practice of promising to walk together is a precious core of our creedless faith. Please join me in reading these words as they hold meaning for you. We covenant together to make a welcoming community, to walk together in the way of truth and love, to seek the life of the Spirit as it is known by each person, to support each other in thought, word, and deed as we work to build a better world. Our gathering hymn today is May Nothing Evil Cross This Door. Please sing along with the Community Church Virtual Choir if you're so moved. Our Share the Plate partner organization for June is Tennesseans for Alternatives to the Death Penalty. TADP works to honor life by abolishing the death penalty. They seek to achieve this goal through educating and organizing citizens to act for change in our state. TADP empowers surviving families of murder victims, death row exonerees, families of those on death row, racial justice advocates, faith communities, and other partners to educate Tennesseans about the failures of the death penalty system and why Tennessee should end the practice. So please give generously this month. There are alternatives to the death penalty. For example, life or life without the possibility of parole. Your screen shows the variety of ways you have to be able to donate. As always, your support is so very appreciated. As you review those various donation methods, TADP's Executive Director, Reverend Stacy Rector, will explain more about their mission.
Well, we're an organization that's statewide that's primarily working to educate Tennesseans about all of the things we see as being wrong with the death penalty and why we think it's a failing and failed policy for Tennessee that's extremely costly and that's unnecessary for our state. And so we travel around, we talk to groups, we help people get the information they need to make those informed decisions for themselves about whether or not this is a policy that we think is working for us here in Tennessee. And so we've been at this for some time and have really seen progress as more and more people from a lot of different backgrounds, different perspectives are starting to say, wait a minute, this policy, is unfairly applied, it's expensive, it puts victims' family members through decades of litigation. It brings innocent people into the mix, sometimes sending them to death row. When we have alternatives, like life without parole, or a life sentence in Tennessee is another alternative. And that sentence in our state is a 51-year minimum before you're eligible for parole. It's one of the harshest life sentences in the country. So we have these two sentences that absolutely will protect the public and hold violent offenders accountable, that don't risk executing innocent people, that aren't as expensive, and that could give some legal finality much sooner to these families who end up waiting 30 years for a sentence to be carried out.
Today's offertory song is Mother Spirit, Father Spirit.
Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, where Morning, everyone. That song was composed by Norbert Čopak, and he was a minister in Prague and Czechoslovakia. And we're going to hear part of his story in a moment in our Time for All Sages, the story of the flower communion. I'm just going to guess that you've done the flower communion. Of course, we couldn't do it in person this year. Bring a flower from home and take one that someone else brought away, nor could we do it together last year. That's how long it's been during our time together that we've been separated. I hope you'll do it together soon. He came up with the flower communion. Well, you'll hear about it in the Time for All Sages. But what I wanted to tell you about Norbert Čopak, this song is a lovely one on Flower Communion Day and also on Father's Day. Here he was such a long time ago, imagining the idea of God or the holy as a mother spirit or a father spirit, and questioning what should I call you? You're something greater than all. But who are you? What are you? How can I know you? He was killed in the death camps in World War II. And we remember him as a Unitarian hero and martyr. So that is the one who composed that hymn and also came up with our still honored flower communion, Norbert Čopak.
Nearly 100 years ago, the Unitarian minister Norbert Čopak offered his Czechoslovakian congregation a ritual to respond to their questions about how to be a community that welcomed rather than suppressed diversity. Czechoslovakia was a country formed in the aftermath of war, struggling just 5 years after the end of that war with questions of belonging and identity, trust and anxiety. Čopak's ritual took the traditional bread and wine communion that his community was too heretical for and too resistant to these usual symbols and played with this ritual. He turned instead to the beauty of nature all around them and invited each of his congregants to find a flower and bring it to the church one Sunday. That each person would find the flower that was beautiful to them was a symbol of their affirmation that each of us has a piece of the truth, our unique sense of what beauty means. On their way into the church, his congregation was in turn invited, each of them, to place that flower in a vase, which symbolized their free choice to enter into community alongside all the other people that saw beauty in their own way, symbolized by their flowers placed there as well. A free church where people freely choose to walk together across their differences. Once everyone had gathered, they'd bring the vase forward. Then the minister, Čopak, he would bless it. And then he'd invite everyone to choose a flower to take home with them, but just not the one that they came with. Again, this free choice affirmed each person's choice to be blessed by another and to receive with an open heart their different understandings of beauty and to feel connected rather than divided by this difference. In this moment where so many forces seek to divide people, to play on our fears of differences and our anxieties of the other, here we remember that we freely choose to walk together and to be blessed by the differences between us and to see these differences as beauty.
Chopek was also when he was imprisoned in the death camps, he continued to write songs and prayers and lead services. So he was a real giving and sharing and hopeful man. When I called or I guess emailed Reverend Haley to make sure we could use her Time for All Sages in our service, I asked her about Steve Saddam, who drew those beautiful illustrations. Steve was in my very first congregation in Riverside, California, Steve and Susan, and I knew them very well. It was a small congregation like ours, like yours, and they had their first two children during the 4.5 years that I was there, or their only two children, and their kids are, through college now. We've stayed in touch a little bit on Facebook, and Gretchen and I talked. They've moved to Colorado, and Gretchen and I talked about how wonderful Steve and Susan are, and that just reminds me that just like our principals say, and just like I think we learn from watching nature and being part of it, that we are all connected. We are connected with one another, and that never ends. That won't end. When I am not serving you as your minister, you've become a part of me. I remember Steve and Susan so well, and they are part of who I am and who I have become, and I hope it's the same for them. All right, we have a meditation now, and this is really special. These are beautiful photographs that Jean, not only does Jean Bryant have a magnificent garden. Again, I haven't seen it in full bloom in person because I wasn't there since last March, but I have been to Jean's house. If you're really nice to him, he might invite you over someday, but also you can see it on Facebook if you befriend him. You do have to scroll through a lot of less beautiful pictures of Trump and Joe Manchin and his other political posts, but they're very worthy. He curates the news, and in between those are pictures from his garden. But I've curated for you a slideshow of many of the flowers that he shares, also along with little suggestions and ideas and background about the flowers. It's quite a collection. It's quite a photograph collection, along with some music by Unitarian Universalists. And so what I'm asking you to do is enjoy the photographs, enjoy Jean's handiwork, both photography and gardening, and just meditate upon the great gifts we give one another. He doesn't have to post these, on Facebook to share with people, but he does. And we are so grateful. So thank you, Jean. And relax, enjoy, breathe, and be with the flowers.
I confess I've been trying so hard to keep it all out, keep it all out. So love, I pray that you break my heart so wide open that the whole world falls in. I give up trying so hard to keep it all out, keep it all out. So love, fill me, breathe me to pieces. Love, I pray that you break my heart so wide open that the whole world falls in. If I'm made for love, make me strong enough. And when I need to hide, love, hold me in your grace until I feel safe. Then love, fill me, breathe me to pieces. Love, come fall into my heart, it's wide open. Doves fly out and doves come home here to rest. In my heart is wide open, heart is wide open, my heart is wide open, heart is wide open, my heart is wide open. Fill me, breathe me to heart is wide open, heart is wide open, my heart. Fill me, breathe me to heart is wide open, heart is wide open, my heart is when I need to hide. Love, hold me in your grace. Heart is wide open, my heart
Thank you, Jean. And also thanks to Scott. Scott did a lot of work to put that meditation together. And he thanks everyone else, but he just doesn't thank himself. He works a lot behind the scenes on these Sundays when he is the service coordinator. Thanks, Scott. And I send him like 60 some photographs, and maybe it was 70 some. No, it was 120 some photographs. And I told him, it's going to be a 6-minute song. I didn't do the math. Maybe you can figure it out. I mean, you're a pilot. You must know how to do the math. Happy Father's Day. Bye. And, he'll have it done within, a couple hours. We'll be like, done. Here it is. He's a wonderful service to our congregation, and you'll get to know him better when we're back together in person. This is a poem which I found, and I thought you might like to hear for the Juneteenth holiday. It's a little bit to do with flowers. I guess you can see that giving you a sort of a virtual flower communion, talking about flowers, showing you flowers, and sharing a few ideas about ministry and the church that start with flowers. But this is for Juneteenth. It's by Langston Hughes. It's called Our Land. We should have a land of sun, of gorgeous sun, and a land of fragrant water where the twilight is a soft bandana handkerchief. Of rose and gold, and not this land where life is cold. We should have a land of trees, of thick, tall trees, bowed down with chattering parrots, brilliant as the day. Not this land where birds are gray. We should have a land of joy, of love and joy and wine and song, and not this land where joy is wrong. So for Juneteenth, that all of us keep working toward a world where there's a land of joy for everyone. So how's ministry like a garden? That's not a that's not a quiz. You can make almost anything, take almost anything, and say, how is it like ministry, or how is it like whatever it is you do. But I would say that ministry is like a garden in a couple of ways. It's both planned and wild. It's filled with promise and hope, most of which never comes to pass. When I think now of the things that I imagined I would do or be able to achieve. But I guess that's true for many and probably most of us. I laugh. It's also filled with the disappointment and despair, but most of all, I would say surprise. And many of the surprises I will never be able to tell anyone because of confidentiality. I will take them to my grave. You will never know what creatures will visit in that garden, what dramas will take place, what amazing diversity and beauty can exist unless you begin. And I believe it goes without saying that while I practice the professional ministry, meaning I studied for it and I get paid for it, we are all ministers, and we all have a ministry. And it's also not like a garden. is nothing unless you give it away, give it away, give it away over and over. And you're always giving the ministry away. If you make it about you, you might succeed temporarily, but you fail in the long run. The ministry is always something to give away to those to whom you minister with. So, taking a couple of Jean's photographs, I'm just going to offer you a very small bouquet of thoughts for our flower communion. And these are things that I've probably said before, but if there were, 3 things that I'd like to leave you with, these would be those. And the first one is this beautiful lady slipper. Probably I chose it because it's a flower that for me is home. We have pink lady slippers that grow native in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, which is where I grew up, very close to the edge of the Pine Barrens in southern New Jersey. And Jean says, I've seen the yellow lady slipper growing in the wild in Tennessee, but the pink lady slipper is more common. I purchased one of each about 10 years ago. I lost the pink one. The yellow one came back the second year and then lay dormant before returning. It's been reliable the past 5 years with 4 blooms this year. These plants are rare and should not be disturbed. They are next to impossible to transplant from their native habitat. So what these lady slippers made me think about is the first R. I divided my 3 ideas into 3 R's. Risk. I see Greater Nashville as a congregation that has taken big risks and is not afraid to take risks. Don't lose that edge. Don't choose fear over risk. I would say that Gene, with his garden, he's taken risks. They're calculated risks, and sometimes they fail. One of the things I love about his meditations upon his garden is that when something fails or when something doesn't return, or he makes a mistake by not, cutting something back or not putting it in the right place, he'll say, oh, well, I guess I didn't do that right. I'll try again next year. Self-forgiveness is a big part of being willing to take risks. They go hand in hand. So, when we think about mythical gardens, our minds usually go to the Garden of Eden. That's the kind of the prototypical garden in theology and philosophy. But, we never really talked about flowers in the Garden of Eden. It was all about the fruit. And Barbara Hanna wrote this in a book called Striving Toward Wholeness. She wrote, there are many people who never succeed in leaving the vicinity of Eden at all. They are driven out like everyone else, of course, but they camp around its walls, unable to tear themselves away. That image is so powerful to me. It's true not only of churches and congregations, but of people in general, camping around the walls of the Garden of Eden. Safety, security, the known, the fear of change, the fear of the wilderness. I had to laugh at my son and my daughter-in-law. They're on a camping trip right now. And my daughter-in-law, she comes from a wealthy family, but she has money. And she bought every camping thing you can imagine for this camping trip. She really has never camped much before. My son is really roughed it with me. And she bought bear spray. I guess it's not really that unusual to have bear spray nowadays. I didn't know when I went to Yellowstone. I didn't have bear spray, but I'm like, you bought 3 of them, Christina? She's like, yeah, one for each. She she's fearful of the grizzly bears in Yellowstone and of, everything in nature. But I can see as they travel that the beauty, the love, the community she's experiencing is chipping away at some of her fears. She grew up in, the beach and lost, in California. What can you do? But that's camping around the walls. There's a lot of reasons why people do that and why churches do that. But risk. Go ahead, risk. Leave the walls. Leave the walls. Anais Nin wrote, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Even in the 2 years that we've been, the year and a half, more than, almost a year and a half, that we've been separated and that we've been quarantined and the church has been closed for all practical purposes, Greater Nashville has taken risks. You've reached out in the community. You helped a refugee. You enlarged your garden. You've connected with one another. You've kept groups going. Many of you never used Zoom before, or, used a lot of these technical things that you had to get used to. Those are big risks. Lots more. The board continued to, come up with new initiatives and ideas. And you started to look for a new minister. Keep it up. Keep it up. The second R is respect. And the flower I chose here, and it's really about respect and relationship. The one I chose here is the Portoluca, which Jean, let me see if I can find this. Yeah, he said this is a plant your mother may have grown, as well as generations of grandmothers before her. It's been a favorite of gardeners since colonial America. It's the succulent that thrives in heat, drought, and lousy soil. That's a great one. It blooms nonstop all summer long. Its common name is moss rose. My mother grew it in a hollowed out, decaying stump. It reseeded easily with new plants also coming up around the base of the stump each spring. And he, to me, what this suggested to me was the idea of respect for the past, respect for one another, respect for the human being that are among us. Everything is built upon relationship. Never forget that. The relationships are always more important. They're always more important than getting the thing done. There are things to get done, and when you go back and see the building, I've not been there. I will be down there again. I have stuff there, but you'll probably be a little overwhelmed because, of course, there's going to be stuff that you're going to have to do to get the building in shape. But don't fight about it, because relationships matter the most. And if you go to the relationships and work on those, the things will get done. And people will be attracted to you. And the congregation will grow because they will see that you are a place that values one another and that respects one another. And that is all I ever saw from our time together, both online and in person. You spoke to each other with kindness. You listened to one another. You said hello. You asked each other how you were doing. I have never worked with a group of Unitarian Universalists, or anybody else for that matter, who treated one another with so much kindness and respect. It's a huge asset that you have. Stick with it. Stay with it. You'll go far, and you'll grow. You will grow. why would anybody go back to a congregation where people were disrespecting each other and or the clergy person? You know, would you? I wouldn't, unless I was a disrespectful person myself. So, you know, I want to go to a congregation someday where there's respect and where relationships are the most important thing. And respect and relationships are kind of a three-way thing. I mean, you know, Christians would talk about it as a cross, you know, but it's your relationship with the earth, you know, with the people around you, and with whatever, from whatever, and with whatever, you know, you see as your source of wisdom, hope, power, be it God, be it spirit, be it ground of all being, you know, and then your relationship with your own self, so those are all things that go toward relationship and respect. Okay, that's number 2. The third one is return. For return, I chose the clematis and the Indian pink, which I just love these 2 flowers. And let me share what Jean wrote about them. The clematis, he says, this is my first clematis to bloom this season and my second season with it. It's an increasingly popular, hard to obtain variety known as Henri. It's my first experience with a type 2 clematis. They have to be cut back each spring. I didn't do that. And he grew to the top of an 8-foot frame last year, started back down. It had blooms off and on all summer long. But this year it started growing and blooming at the top. I should have cut it back to almost to the ground. And then he says, no big deal. I think it will be nice anyway, and I'll do better next spring. And then the next one is the Indian pink. Oh my gosh, I love this little flower so much. But he writes, this is what I've been waiting for. I start looking every year around early to mid-June for Indian pink to bloom. I used to marvel at this wildflower in my native East Tennessee, usually at elevations of 2,000 feet and above. I'm amazed that it grows so well in my garden here in Nashville. After a couple weeks of this display, I'll deadhead the spent blooms. In late summer to early fall, I'll get a new flush of second growth blooms. Less spectacular, but nice, nevertheless. Now, return is about a lot of things. It's a classic theme, I think, in faith traditions, and in religion of all kind. This theme of coming back and this cycle of life. And gardens remind us of that, and flowers remind us of that. Things come back around. We have another chance. We can forgive ourselves and one another. The congregation is the place. It's the place to understand that. It's the place to learn that. It's a laboratory, just like a garden is a laboratory where you can learn what works, what doesn't work, and you can be surprised. I would never thought this would have grown, in Nashville, but I thought it only grew at 2,000 feet, renewal. We can start over again. We can start all over again. Repentance and forgiveness, forgive ourselves and forgive one another. So those would be the 3 R's that I would leave you with: and return, and respect, and then risk. And finally, I just want to say one thing about another kind of gardens. Instead of just the traditional, flower gardens that we think of when we say garden, or vegetable gardens, I want to say something about transitory gardens. Gardens that are sometimes urban gardens, but they aren't necessarily made of flowers. They may have flowers, but they're usually gardens that are created in response to some event. They can be considered art, And here's a picture of a transitory garden that was created in Louisville after the death of Breonna Taylor. But there were some, there was one in, after George Floyd was killed. And there are many, many, you can find them if you go looking for them online. They are expressions of the community. Transitory gardens are places where people can go to understand that they are not alone. And they're not just a statement, although they are a statement to the wider community. They're also a place of sanctuary. They're a holy place. And that is what I think a Unitarian Universalist congregation can be and ought to be, get away from the walls, but also the place itself. When you come back from being out into the world, the place itself is holy. It's a sanctuary. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you don't close the doors, as long as your being there is a statement. We are here. We are queer. We are proud. Black Lives Matter. Don't mess with us. And also, all are welcome here. All are welcome here. A sanctuary of repose, which is such an important word. However contrived it may be, is a distinctly human need. We need it. We need a place to be together, to rest from what's out there in the world. Don't just huddle around the walls with your bear spray, but come together, make meaning, honor one another. As T.S. Eliot says, find that still point in the turning world, and then go out there and change the world. I love you, and don't be strangers. Amen.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. 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 I know my seal will. I know my seal will. I know this rose 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 will. I know my seal will. I know my seal will. I know my seal will. I know this rose 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 will. I know my seal will. I know this seal will. I know this rose 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 will open.
Thank you, Reverend Cynthia, for those 3 R's to lead us into the future. Now we'll open up to sharing our joys and concerns. Thank you to all of those watching us on YouTube today. We'll see you next Sunday.